On today's Tech Help for Churches, podcast loudness. What are LUFS and why should a podcaster care? Hi, and welcome again to another episode of Tech Help for Churches. This is the show where every week I help you with new media, social media, the internet for your church. My name is Paul Allen Clifford. I'm your host, and I'd love for you to leave your question, so just do that below the video. Now, if you're listening to the audio podcast, which you can subscribe to over at trinitydigitalmedia.com/subscribe, there's no video for you to leave your question under. No problem. Just head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/THFC, short for Tech Help for Churches. And there you can leave your comment under one of those videos. That would be great. So we've been going through a series kind of reviewing, revising, just generally dealing with some of the different issues in podcasting that may have changed since I wrote my book, Podcasting Church. So one important thing for you to consider is LUFS, L-U-F-S. That's short for, if I understand this correctly, loudness units relative, I don't know why it's not LUFS, relative to full scale. So if you're an audio person, think of it as very similar to RMS. RMS means root mean squared. Basically, all you need to know, if you're not an audio person, is this is kind of like, it's not exactly perfect, but it's kind of like the average loudness. Now, what's confusing about recorded audio or even live streamed audio as opposed to your other audio is that recorded audio, we don't know how loud it is. I mean, we know how loud the recording is. We just don't know how loud it is in your place. So if you had this hooked up, the exact same podcast, if you had that hooked up to a huge stereo system with thousands of watts of power pulsing through great big speakers that could handle that, it's going to be a lot louder than if you play the exact same file through the exact same iPhone, etc., into earbuds that are nowhere near your ears. It's just the truth. One will have a lot of volume, the other not so much, even though it's the same exact recording. And that's the problem. So you may have run into this. This is something that kind of irks me a little. One of my favorite podcasts, they record louder than everyone else. So I always have to turn them down just a little bit. And then when the next podcast comes up, I have to turn it back up. Everyone else is pretty much on this level, and they're always on this level. So it's the case that it's annoying to me as a listener that there is a podcast which I like their content, so I don't want to unsubscribe, but I have to turn them down. Every time I have to turn them down. So that's annoying to me. Now, you may have seen something similar, heard it at least, when you're watching television and you're watching along and it's a comfortable volume and then all of a sudden it gets really loud when they go to commercial. There was an FCC rule back when I worked in local television that audio couldn't go above a certain point. So what the local television station did was, for all their content, they lowered the volume, except for commercials. Then they left it up at this certain point. Well, now because of this loudness standard, the idea is that you would get something about the same loudness and it would translate all over. So what is that loudness? -16 or -23 LUFS. LUFS. Now, again, we're talking about, you look at the entire podcast, and on average, what is its average volume? -23, -16 LUFS, depending on whether it's mono or stereo. There's some talk about that. So this is important for the comfort of the people that listen to your podcast, because if they're listening to several, it's better to have them all about the same average volume. It's also better for you because you're not going to have people that unsubscribe because it's too quiet. You're not going to have people that unsubscribe because it's too loud. On average, you'll keep viewers that aren't annoyed that they have to turn up or turn down their music, or turn up or turn down their smartphone, or what have you. So that's helpful. But you might be wondering, well, I can buy that, Paul. How do I do that? Well, I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts, but I do have some links that I'll have in the show notes, either below the video if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching over at trinitydigitalmedia.com, or head over there and you can see how to adjust this in Adobe Audition. There's a tutorial I found by Mike Russell from Music Radio Creative, who's a big podcaster. He and his wife, Isabella, podcast 5 days a week, so they know what they're doing, and he has a background in radio. In fact, I think they both have a background in radio now that I'm thinking about it. So, great tutorial on how to do it in Adobe Audition. I also have a link on the show notes for a free plugin that will allow you to measure this, and then you can adjust it as you're recording. And probably the easiest way to do it is a service called Auphonic, AUPHONIC. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of a discussion of Auphonic in the future, but right now I just want you to know that they can do some processing to where it automatically hits the appropriate levels, and then you're done. And they'll do 2 hours a month for free. Now, if your pastor speaks for an hour and a half every week, that's not going to be free. If your pastor speaks for 20 minutes every week, you're probably going to scoot right under there, even on five weekend months. So just keep that in mind. There is a downloadable version that you can buy that's not too expensive, especially when you compare it to other software. And it really does some stuff to normalize and things like that. So it's really cool, and also allows you to tweak ID3 tags, etc. So those are the different ways of doing this. So just to summarize, basically LUFS are similar to RMS. They're similar to the average value of the loudness of the recording, so that when you go from one podcast to another, it stays about the same volume, doesn't take into account peaks. Some peaks are going to be above, some low volume pieces are going to be below that. You can play with the compression to kind of even that out a bit if that's important to you. But it's something that I think that churches really need to be on, because you just don't need one more thing that's annoying. You don't need one more thing where people say, I'm going to turn this off. No, you don't want that. So go ahead and research how to get the appropriate loudness level in your podcasts so that you can go out and change eternity. If you like this content, you'd probably like my email newsletter. So head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/gifts, GIFTS, and pick up your copy over there. And one of 5 free church tech gifts that I have for you as well. If you'd like to support the show, by all means head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/store. There I have my digital resources, some links to my physical hard copies of resources, or if you'd really like to get everything for a better price, then you really need to look into Church Tech U. ChurchTechU.com, short for university, is a place where I have all my resources assembled and a community of people that can talk about church tech. So head over there and join for as little as 54 cents a day. So very inexpensive, less than you probably spend on coffee, quite frankly. And you can spend time going through all my resources. Until next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford with TrinityDigitalMedia.com. Go out and change eternity.